Lara, thank you for coming and spending time with us. Your jam is of particular interest to me, so I'm really glad to share your insights. I've been stalking you on Instagram and on TikTok for some time, and I have the pleasure and privilege of calling you a friend also. So thank you so much. I'm grateful for you.
Thank you for having me. I'm grateful too and super excited.
Your tips, I mean, I've had the chance to sit down with you, but your tips and your tricks and all of the stuff that you do on social media is captivating, and the amount of value you cram into like a micro tidbit is profound. And I'm wondering if you can share with all of us sort of who you were before you were this cool, amazing badass who's kicking ass and taking names and really helping people be seen, be heard, and make the money they deserve in their businesses and with their message.
Oh, yeah, great question. So I've been doing this for 28 years, so I don't really remember what I was like before I did this. I was an embryo because I'm only 29. No, I started very, very, very young in this career. I was basically emptying garbages and answering phones at an agency and kind of worked my way up the agency ladder. So I've been a branding and growth strategist for, like I said, about 28 years, keynote speaker for about 12 of those. First half of my career, I was working with Fortune brands, so Shell, Johnson and Johnson, Benjamin Moore, Cadbury, and then the latter half, I've been focused on small to medium sized businesses, specifically service based businesses, where they are selling themselves as a service, coaches, consultants, speakers, doctors. And I help them by kind of increasing their perceived value in their marketplace, differentiating their brand in a crowded marketplace, and
Mm.
building those predictable leads and improving and automating their sales process.
Brilliant. How did you come to all this? What was the first thing about this industry that interested you? Because I feel like, and you can certainly correct me if you have a different opinion, but this industry that you excel so beautifully at is not for everybody, and you almost have to have a certain amount of creative genius and ability to see the unseen, so see the story beneath the story, so that you can find the story, pluck the gem, and then let it shine.
I really like the way that you framed that. It was far more articulate and interesting than I would say. I think generally speaking, whenever I'm talking to anybody who's like, I really want to get into marketing or I'm really interested in what you do, to me, the fundamental is that you have to be empathetic. Like it has to be in your core. I think if you don't have that, you would struggle very, very hard in this industry because you've got to understand and put yourself into the shoes of the person that you're talking to. And you have to understand like what is their day-to-day like. You have to pull yourself out of your clothing and kind of put theirs on and think about like what are the pains and the frustrations, the things that keep them up at night, what are they dreaming about. And in order to kind of answer those questions, you have to have empathy, and you have to really be able to understand what makes other people tick.
Mm. Well, I think also being in your position, that is true for you twofold in many ways, because you need to be able to see. So, let's say I'm a coach and I coach women on mindset, making it up as I go. So I'm a women's mindset coach. You have to be able to be empathetic to me, in terms of, like, I'm the human being that's doing the coaching, and I'm trying to, build a business and be heard in a noisy marketplace, and I'm trying to, really overcome those limiting beliefs rolling around the back of my head. Well, really, do I deserve to charge those prices, and am I worth it, and what is my competition, what are they charging? And oftentimes people will look at somebody who's in their realm or their competition, and they will ask themselves, like, why are they getting featured, and why is everybody listening to them specifically and not me? So you have to be able to understand that whole bag of tricks, and also the demographic that ultimately, say, I would be serving, so that they marry up and so that they mesh beautifully. What is the starting process for you when you're going through all of this and just trying to uncover all of these hidden pieces and build the puzzle out?
So the starting process with the client that I'm working with and uncovering what they truly need, or is it something else? in
Yeah,
my
so
process.
if you have a client that you're starting to work with, do you start with the client themselves and just really trying to uncover and show them their differentiator, and also how is it you uncover that for them?
That's such a good question. There's kind of there is a duality that's always happening with your clients. So it really, it depends. It depends on whether somebody's coming to me with an established business, which is probably the vast majority of my clients. They have an established business. They've been marketing to a certain group of people for a period of time. So they've got business insight and business knowledge. There's always one component where I want to understand what is the dream they're looking to create? What does success look like to them? Because everything we do in business has to get them to that goal. I do also need to uncover, what are some of the stumbling blocks? So you want to achieve this and you're here right now. What's preventing you from achieving those goals? Now, I am not a mindset coach. I'm really, really clear about that. That's not my jam. I'm pragmatic. I can understand business very well. I've been a self student of mindset practices, but I'm certainly not a mindset coach. So there's that end of things, and then the other end of things is understanding the marketplace. So my job oftentimes is when a client comes to me with a challenge, that's what they believe is wrong with their business. But my job is to get to know them and their business and be able to kind of push away their perceptions of what they need and instead look at what truly is needed in the business to grow. And that I would say 9 times out of 10 is not what they think they're coming to me for. So most people will come to me because they want more leads in their business, right? I need to get more leads. More people need to be aware of who I am and calling me. Oftentimes when we dig down deeper and either look at what it is they want to achieve or build in their business, more leads is not going to get them there. And oftentimes, when we dig into what's actually happening in the business, the issue isn't leads. I can give you an example of this.
Yeah, for sure.
I was dealing with this client in the U.S. and they were like, we're hiring you because we want to get more leads in the business. And I took a look at their business, and what was really clear is their processes were not working at all. So there was no processes, there were no systems, and they had extremely unhappy employees. So what would have happened is if we had focused on getting them leads, it would have been like fishing with a big hole in the net, right? You get a whole bunch of these fish in there, and then the fish escape because they're like, not for me. The business just they weren't producing a good enough product at that time. So that's what we had to focus on. We had to focus on employee happiness, and we had to focus on improving the product, the processes, and the systems.
Brilliant. And it's helpful too, because if you are the entrepreneur, the service-based business, you can't always read the label from inside the bottle. So it's such a gift to have somebody like you who has the prowess and the experience and the expertise that you do to be able to go, not that, this.
Right.
Do you ever get any pushback from people with respect to because I know like one of the things that everybody needs to be seen and to be heard and to have business and to get leads is to be visible. Do you ever have to coach somebody through what it is like to step fully onto the stage, whether the stage be an actual stage or a virtual stage, in terms of getting seen and getting out there and being on, say, TikTok?
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many stumbling blocks. Where do I begin? Yeah, typically a big part. So I'm a big believer in attraction-based marketing, right? So if somebody was to come to me and they said, look, I really want to grow my business through ads, I'm not your girl. I've never done ads for my own business. And I've never done any ads for my clients' businesses. And it's not that I don't believe in advertising. It's that I believe most businesses need to nail down attraction marketing before they invest in advertising. And I also fundamentally believe that sometimes we can do things with attraction-based marketing that are far more effective, and by the way, cost effective, than advertising, right? Because attraction-based marketing largely is low to no cost. So a lot of what I do when I do work with my clients is getting them to build their authority, and getting them to build authority is oftentimes done through our own owned media, so our own social media channels. It can be borrowed through other people. So in other words, we appear on somebody's podcast, we appear, we're a special guest, or it can be transferred. So we can find ways for people to transfer their authority to us, which is sometimes done through influencer marketing, et cetera. But that building your own authority through your own channels is really what you're talking about, which is where you need to appear on. Video marketing is huge. Getting your face, your name out there, especially important with service-based businesses. I always attribute this to like when you go, when your clients are looking into services like yours, there's a plethora of options available to them. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like walking into a Baskin Robbins, right? There's like 400 different flavors in front of us. And we're like, I don't know, which one do I want? I don't want to make the wrong decision. And that's like a $5 purchase. Oftentimes with service-based businesses, we're talking about thousands of dollars.
For sure.
So your video marketing becomes your pink spoon. How Baskin Robbins kind of gives you that little taste that hold a pink spoon up to you, and you're able to taste before you buy. That's what video marketing does. So it's attraction marketing. I'm attracting people to me. I'm not paying money for that attraction. And I'm able to convert those people by giving them a taste of my services into potential clients for my business, either leads or clients.
So brilliant.
Yeah. And there's so many issues that people have before we get started with video marketing, from I don't like to look at myself on camera. I think I sound ridiculous. I have no idea what to talk about. Will anybody listen to me? All of those things come up.
I echo all of them for sure. So what is your first piece of advice to talk somebody off the ledge with respect to, they know it's important, of course, they know that they need to be out there, and the way you articulated that is genius, of course, but there still is that inner dialogue. Do you have anything that you offer them in terms of, listen, you're just gonna have to grip it and rip it and get out there and be seen?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, it doesn't serve you to be your industry's best kept secret, right? And this is truly what's happening. If you're not out there delivering that pink spoon, you probably have, services that are incredibly good, but nobody really knows about you. And that doesn't serve you. Like, expertise is wonderful to say that you've been doing this for, I've been doing what I've been doing for 28 years, but if nobody knows about it, what good is my expertise? I've got to serve people. And the more people I can serve in my business, the better, right? And so that's why it's so important to get out there and deliver your message. You move from being your industry's best kept secret to being an authority in your industry. And that translates to sales. So again, like almost 100% of people that reach out to me want to increase sales. Well, there's a really good way to do that. Then there's the tactical stuff. I'm going to say something highly controversial.
I love it already.
It's what I fundamentally believe. So for me, I'm in my 40s. I'm not a 20-year-old woman who looks amazing on camera all the time. I have my own insecurities. And if I created a video of just myself talking, I know what would happen, which is I would critique myself to the nth degree. I'd look at every fine line on my face. I already look at every expression and think, oh my God, you start to notice how uneven your face is. I mean, we're horrible to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? So the only way I could get videos out there was to put a filter on my face. Right. And I have no shame about that. I tell every single client, look, if one of your issues is that you're terrified of looking at yourself on camera, that would be a stumbling block, that you'd sit there, you wouldn't hit publish because of all of those things. Do what you need to do to get the video out. And that might be really controversial. Do I believe that filters are horrible for our society? Yeah, probably they are. But I also know that if I didn't put one on, I wouldn't be releasing my content. And so you've got to, the big lesson there is you just have to do what you need to do to get through. And so it's the same thing that I do with my clients when we're talking about the content that they're creating. There's a framework to creating compelling content. And so one of the stumbling blocks is I don't know what to say or how to say it. Wonderful. We can get through that. There's a simple framework that works really, really great. that I've been using for years now. I've used it when I talked up on stage. So let's work through that framework and we'll get you over that very small hurdle.
Mm. That's so powerful because I will often hear people when they start, well, first of all, I hear everybody, particularly women, always saying, I can't stand the way I look, or, I wanted to record that video, but the lighting was terrible and I looked like an axe murderer, and I just like, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it later, or I'll do it when I have like the perfect conditions. But the ultimate cost of that is the people that are waiting and need to hear your message never get to hear from you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, like, whatever gets the gift to the receiver is brilliant. You were talking earlier before we started recording about speaking and how at the beginning of this, you are not immune to any of this as well. Had a difficult time being on stage and sharing your message,
Yeah.
and like even just looking at the ripple effect of all of the people that you're now able to help and serve and becoming an authority as a result, partly by speaking on stage, what we would all be missing out on if you hadn't been able to tweak that. Can you share with us the beginning of that story where you were at emotionally and what happened?
With pleasure and horror, I will. It's one of those horrific stories you look back on, you're just like, ooh, it gives me one of those cringy feels. But so it was, I'm going to say probably about 13, 14 years ago now. I was overseeing sales and marketing for my family business. So I'd left my career as a brand strategist, went into this new industry I knew nothing about. So I had to, not I had to, I decided to sign up to attend this association event, this association for the industry that we were selling to. And my thinking at the time was, this will be a great way for me to meet people and to learn more about this industry. So this association event took place on a yacht in the Toronto Harbor, and basically went there. My sister was also there. She also worked for the family business. I think my ex-husband at the time was also there with us. And I'm quite introverted, and at that time I was also incredibly shy. And so the idea of just pressing the flesh and networking was really it was a hard one for me. But I was there. That was my first step. It was like a little micro step. But I sat at my at this little bench and ate hors d'oeuvres and kind of was like, I really know I've got to get up and start meeting people, but I'm kind of shy and I don't really want to do it. And anyways, my shyness was broken by the sound of my name being announced over a loudspeaker, and the announcement basically was, we're having a member moment where we want to recognize one of our new members. Lara McCulloch, would you please come to the stage and introduce yourself? And like, you can just imagine, like, I'm a deer caught in headlights, like I'm mid hors d'oeuvre eating, and I'm like, did they just call my name? My palms start sweating, like my mouth fills with cotton. And I feel like I'm walking the plank. I have to walk over to this stage, which is basically the dance floor, and all 150 people are kind of surrounding me in a circle with a microphone right in the center.
Oh God,
It's like the worst,
the worst
worst
nightmare.
setup. Totally. I'm pretty sure I had nightmares about that before it even happened for years. Anyway, so I stood up there at this microphone and I looked around and like everybody staring at me, and I was like, I I can't remember my name. Like I can't remember where I work. Like, what's going on? And luckily, my sister was in the front row, and she's like, "Your name's Lara. You work for this company." And thank God she was there. I kind of like got it out, and I just remember running back to my table, and then the cruise ship docks, or the yacht docks, and I swore to myself I would never feel that way again, because it was a horrible feeling. I felt crippled by fear. And so as soon as I got home, I looked up on Google when the next industry event was happening, and I signed myself up as a speaker. And
Wow, that's bold.
this was back in 2006 or 2007. So maybe I didn't do my math right. Anyways, 2006 or 2007, social media had just kind of started to make, its name, but it wasn't being used in business at that time. And I was like, I'm going to speak about social media for business. And anyways, I had 3 months to prepare, and I did that. I like every single night was working on this talk, rigorously to kind of get out this ideal talk. I show up at the conference center to give my talk. I think I skipped over the part where I was accepted, and then I tried to think of 1,000 excuses in between as to why I couldn't go, but I I was steadfast. I show up for my talk, and the room is crammed, like it's full of people, and it's standing room only now. So there's people like milled at the outside of the room waiting to hear this talk on social media, this thing that they were hearing about, but they knew nothing about in business. Anyways, I delivered my talk, and I did what I would consider now to be an okay, job. It wasn't anything exceptional. It was okay, but I got a standing ovation. Like and I'm not just talking about the people who are standing up at the at the ends of the room. I mean, the people who were seated actually got up and gave me a standing ovation. And I have never had a standing ovation since. So I don't know what kind of weird magic was happening, but in that process, like a light switch went off, and I was like, this is my thing. This is what I need to be doing. I loved this very same thing that I was so fearful of. With some preparation and expectation that I was doing it, it became my greatest superpower, really.
There's so much to unpack in that story, but I had a similar experience, and I literally did the exact same thing you're talking about. I put myself in a position. I obligated myself to speak on a stage. I was not a speaker. It was literally my first time ever speaking on stage, and I was speaking on the fourth day of a 4-day event. And so I didn't speak for 3 days, and I didn't sleep for 3 days. I didn't eat for 3 days, and a few days before that, getting to the event was not amazing either. So for anybody listening, if you're having one of those moments where you don't like being in front of the camera, but you need to, or you don't like being on the stage, but you know you should, to echo your sentiment, Lara, it literally changed my life, because I got up there and a same standing ovation, and I realized, oh, my fear was actually my rocket fuel. My
Yeah.
fear and that energy that, it's so much. Everybody thinks, oh, well, if you shouldn't have stage fright, or you shouldn't be nervous to press record. But the truth is, once you do, that energy comes through, and that authenticity and that vulnerability comes through, and you can't fake that. Like, the truth is palpable. And when you're in those states, and when you're able to just share from what one of my mentors calls your home zone, that place where that it's just true and beautiful for you, you don't have to memorize. You can just kind of get up on stage, and even if it's a virtual stage, doesn't matter, and really just let all of you be seen, which is a rare and beautiful gift. So
I love that.
yeah, it's just it was a game changer, because had I not obligated myself to do that, I would have never chosen to. It was just sort of like holding my feet to the fire. And so many times we all have to have that little bit of pressure or obligation to
Yes.
to just step. And then once you step, you realize your gift is on the other side of that fear, and something
Yeah.
that you might not have ever had the chance to experience had you not chosen to do so.
Well, yeah. And look, we've all heard, well, not we've all heard, there's a very famous story about burning the boats, right? Which a lot of people have heard of, which was, this, I'm going to ad lib, and it's going to be a really crappy version of the story. But essentially, a general wanted to conquer a new land. His boats cruise up to this new land, and all of his army comes out, and what he did next really was instrumental in getting them to fight, which was he burned the boats. He gave them no opportunity to retreat. It was either you fight and win, or you fight and die. No other choice. And that's ultimately, like, I'm a huge believer in that. Fear is going to exist in every facet of our life. It never goes away. There's no such thing as conquering fear. There's only burning the boats. There's only making the decision that I'm going to give myself no opportunity to retreat into my safe place, and instead step forward into the spotlight, into that place that scares me. And that's where all the magic happens. Like, I've been able to travel the world. I've been hired to speak in Hong Kong, the Philippines, Australia, all throughout the Caribbean, all throughout North America. I never would have experienced that had I not stepped into the spotlight and done something that made me really scared.
Mm. I recently was interviewing a woman who is an author for Hay House, and before she had written her first book, she went over to the head editor at Hay House, and she sat down. They were friends, and she, had all her sticky note stories and was going to start assembling this incredible book. And there was one particular story that was very controversial, we'll say, and very vulnerable and raw. And she sat down with her and she said, well, I'll tell that story maybe in my next book. And the editor, who is the chief editor, closed her laptop and said, until you're ready to tell that story, you don't have a book. So come back when you're ready to tell that story.
Ooh, yeah.
So I love that. I love that I love messaging and I love story, but mostly I love the people who are behind all of it and orchestrating all of it. I was watching something you did recently. It was either on TikTok or Instagram, and it really hit home. You had two shirts side by each that were very similar looking, or perhaps the same even. And you talked about the difference between price based on brand. Can you talk about price differentiation and how some people try to compete just by having the lowest price?
Yeah. Yeah. So so basically that visual was like I can't even remember the brand. I think it was Tom Ford. There was a Tom Ford plain black long sleeve shirt beside this, almost like private label plain black shirt. They look exactly the same. If somebody wore them, they'd look exactly the same, but one was, $1,500, whereas the other one was $15. And the whole lesson there is the power of a brand and what a brand can do to help elevate what we're willing to pay for a product or service. Now, doing like doing a talk on pricing would take a long period of time, but essentially, there's perceived value in brands, right? And that value can be dictated by a whole bunch of things. But as a business, we have basically three strategic choices that we can choose from. We can choose to be the lowest price leader, which means that we charge the lowest price systematically in our business. With everything we do. And there's many successful brands out there that do this very well. Walmart, Costco, they're known as low price leaders. The other option that we have is that we can be the noise leader. The noise leaders are the people who spend more than anybody else in their industry in advertising, which means you hear about them more, which means that
Mm.
that's how they create dominance. There's only one other option that you have if you don't want to be the low price leader and if you don't want to be the noise leader. Most small businesses can't afford to be the noise leader and they can't afford to be the low price leader. So the only other option you have is to have what I call a disruptive cure, which means that you have something about your brand that disrupts your marketplace and is a cure to an untapped pain for your customers. And there's many different ways to develop a disruptive cure. We can talk about those, but most businesses actually don't make those strategic choices. They live in what I call the land of ambiguity, right? So they're maybe sometimes lower price. They're usually kind of in line with market pricing. Sometimes they tend to quote lower. Sometimes maybe they'll invest in marketing their business. Sometimes they don't. They kind of look, sound, and feel like everybody else in their industry. Although, really funny statistic, the vast majority of business leaders think that their brands are highly differentiated in the marketplace, but only a very small percentage of their customers actually agree. So even when you don't think you're in the land of ambiguity, most businesses are. Right. And what happens when you're in the land of ambiguity is that people will pay the lowest possible price. Right. If you're virtually the same as somebody else, there is no reason for me to pay a price premium.
So it's almost like failing by default and unknowingly in sounds like in many cases.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When you don't make that really concerted strategic choice, you've missed an opportunity to create value in your business. And it's that perceived value that people are willing to pay more for. So how do you do that? Well, there's many different ways. There's niching down in terms of your market really helps. So if I become an if I become an expert as opposed to a generalist, people pay more for expertise than they do for a generalist. I can also niche down my services so that I become an expert in this one particular area of what I do, as opposed to a whole bunch of different things. And then being able to articulate your value in a way is also really important. So shifting how people see you from being seen as a cost to being seen as an investment is really important. So that's where you have to look at, where do you actually create lift for your customers? How do you prove that? What are some, testimonials you have, case studies you have, and actual data you have to support the fact that you are better, more effective at doing these very specific things than the plethora of competition that you have.
That is so powerful, because I know that many people are reluctant to, they want to be a little bit different, but it's kind of like this. Have you ever been in, say, grade school or something, and there was that moment where all of a sudden, and it sounds like you've experienced this as an adult as well, but we've all usually experienced it as a child, where we're in school, we're in class, and then all of a sudden all eyes are on us, and it's a terribly embarrassing experience.
Right.
And how standing too far outside of the norm, like how does that work in terms of how far do you go to create that distinction? I know that you talked about the matrix reference, the red pill or the blue pill, and it's
Yeah.
like, if everybody else is zigging, how do you zag? What does the
Yeah.
orchestration of that look like?
Yeah, so I refer to this as like an anti-narrative. So if you look in history, in the history of brands, any really successful brand has done this incredibly well. So well that you might not have even noticed they've done it. But there's a look, sound, and feel to every industry, right? I take the wedding industry. It's about creating the wedding of your dreams, and it has a certain look to it, and there's a certain feel to it, and everybody kind of says the same thing. Creating an anti-narrative really gets down to, like, what are the beliefs that I have that might contradict what currently exists in my industry? What do I fundamentally believe that others may not? What are the beliefs that exist that I disagree with? Right. So being able to create a foundation for your brand based on how you think about things differently, or what you believe to be different, is a really powerful way, especially with a service-based business, right? Because with products, features oftentimes differentiate us, but with
Right.
services, like, I don't know, I can't really tell what makes you different until I hand you money and choose to do business with you.
Right.
So creating a foundation of beliefs, or even your what's often called your hero story, is based off of your fundamental beliefs, based on your experience in life, right? And so the more we can hone in onto the anti-narrative, which is, there are narratives that exist in the industry, and here's my anti-narrative, or my different perspective. That's how we can create distinction in our marketplace, especially with a service-based business. We saw that with Apple. Apple hit the marketplace, versus PC, and you had Apple being the anti-Orwellian, anti-conformist rebels, and positioning PC as something different. They weren't talking about, their faster processing or their brighter, cooler machines. They did in some degrees, but the brand was really founded on that platform of anti-narrative.
So brilliant. For those people who are listening to this conversation and wondering what it's like to work with you, what is your, if you're willing to share, your favorite example of taking a client from left to right, and what can somebody expect if they reach out to you and really try and transform their business? Like, do you have an example of somebody you've worked with that was able to, like, take these, like, literal jewels and gems and piece it together and change their business? Because at the end of the day, it really isn't just about make more money. When you are able to make more money, the ripple effect of the freedom and the transformation and all of
Yeah.
those things is actually quite profound, and you are the fulcrum to making that happen.
Well, it's interesting because, like, the example I might use typically would be very different from the example that fulfilled me the most. So the example I might use the most is, I had an event planner who began working with me, and she was in a really bad financial situation when we first started working together. Like her revenue had dipped quite substantially, and she was based in the San Francisco area and was basically an event planner to anybody who was holding an event. That was a huge issue because her competition was anybody who was also an event planner that held any type of event. So she had a ton of competition. And after we began working with each other, very quickly I honed in on what did she love doing? Like, what were the types of events? And it became very clear she loved working with tech startups that were well funded, that had really what they were looking to do was to create waves in their industry. So either to attract really, really cool employees to them, or to make their competitors kind of quake in their boots. And so they wanted to push the boundaries and do things that had never been done before. That was where she sang, and that's what she loved doing. And so then it was really clear, you're going to niche down your services to these particular services just for corporate events, as opposed to corporate events and weddings and galas and fundraisers. And you're going to focus your market just on this particular market. Now she became very, very laser focused on who her ideal client was. And she also became very laser focused on where she did her best work. And she was able to reference events that she was super proud of, that she did amazing work with and that she loved. She tripled her revenue in less than a year, just by making that one. She didn't change anything else in her business other than those two things. So that was kind of fun. But the client that I love the most in terms of transformation was actually a lady who was a pharmacist, and she broke her hand and had always been a musician, and kind of she had this pivotal moment in her life where she either was going to be a pharmacist or choose to be a musician, and she chose to be a pharmacist. But she played music forever, and when she fell and broke her wrist, she felt like, oh my gosh, my musical career might be done. And so as a seasoned pharmacist, she decided to become a musician very late in life. And as we began talking, what became so clear to me in our conversations was, to just leave behind the story she had created for the last number of years in her life seemed detrimental to simply become a musician and to fight to get those jobs that were, to play in somebody's restaurant, which is really what she was thinking. And I really challenged her to think about herself differently and to think about all of these life experiences very differently, because she had accumulated just this vast knowledge of health and wellness. She had experienced a moment where her father had dementia and Alzheimer's. Sorry, it was Alzheimer's, not dementia. And had played music at his bedside that he, after, a year of being non-responsive, woke up and had a conversation with her. And it was like, I kept challenging her. You've been through all of these things. You've had all of these experiences. You believe in health and wellness. You believe in the power of music. What if we made you the expert in using music as a tool for health? And we've repositioned her business. She's now speaking on stages to some of the largest associations in health and pharmacology. And she's delivering this message, which is so cool, which is, to these pharmacists and these health professionals, you need to incorporate music, and you need to understand the power of how music can heal and transform people. And so she's living her dream while not forgetting her story, which to me is the most powerful thing. Yeah.
Living her dream while not forgetting her story. I love your ability to take the landscape of two potentially unrelated things and say, not can they fit together, but how can they fit together? Somebody shared this story with me that I'll leave you with, which is back in the day, the McDonald's guy, pardon me, I don't remember his name, the founder of McDonald's, wanted to have McDonald's in Disneyland. And so I guess he had a meeting with Walt, and ultimately it ended up not being a thing. But so what ended up happening was that's why they ended up putting the playlands inside McDonald's, because that was the founder's dream. And it was sort of just the amalgamation of two things that are completely unrelated. But then one of the things also McDonald's became known for when they're having kids' parties and whatnot. You are a literal genius. I'm so grateful to have been able to spend time with you. Is there anything you would like to leave us with? And also, where is the best place we can find you?
Uh, what do I want to leave you with? I think you've done you're so good at asking really great questions and just having a conversation about things. So I think we've touched on quite a few things. I would say where to find me is my favorite place is on TikTok. So you can find me at Win with Lara. So that's WINWITHLARA. And I'm on Instagram as well at Win with Lara. If you click the link on my bio, I have a ton of free things to give you as well. Plus, my whole feed is full of free content that'll teach you how to win more business through differentiation, through value creation, and through generating predictable leads and closing sales. So
Mm.
lots of
Your
stuff.
your feed is literally a mini mastermind, so it's definitely worth a check out. So I love your face. Thank you for being here, and thanks just for being the genius that you are. I appreciate you.
And thank you for being the genius you are. And thank you for having me.